I found my dead mother's hidden diary. What she wrote about our family changed everything. The dust motes danced in the afternoon sunlight as I sorted through Mom's belongings, 3 weeks after her funeral. Her bedroom still smelled like lavender and old books, a scent that made my chest tighten with grief. I'd been putting off this task, but Dad couldn't bear to do it himself, and my sister Emma had fled back to Seattle the day after the service. I was folding her sweaters when my fingers brushed against something hard tucked between the mattress and box spring. Curious, I pulled out a leather-bound journal, its burgundy cover worn smooth by countless hands. My mother's name, Catherine Rose Mitchell, was embossed in fading gold letters on the front. Mom had never mentioned keeping a diary. In fact, she'd always seemed too practical for such things, too busy managing our chaotic household to waste time on introspection. Yet here it was, heavy with secrets in my trembling hands. The first entry was dated 25 years ago, just months before I was born. March 15th, 1999. David doesn't know yet. The test is positive, and I'm terrified. Not because I don't want this baby, but because of what I haven't told him, what I can never tell him. The timing is wrong, all wrong, but maybe this is my chance to build the family I've always dreamed of. Maybe this baby will help me forget. My heart hammered against my ribs. What couldn't she tell Dad? I flipped through pages, searching for answers, but the next several entries were mundane observations about pregnancy symptoms and nursery preparations. Then, when I was 6 months old, September 2nd, 1999, Sarah is perfect. Absolutely perfect. When she looks at me with those dark eyes, James's eyes, I see forgiveness there, even though she doesn't know there's anything to forgive. David loves her completely, and why shouldn't he? She's ours now, in every way that matters. James's eyes. My hands shook as I read the words again. Who was James? I skipped ahead, desperate for context, landing on an entry from my 10th birthday, June 12th, 2009. Sarah asked me today why she doesn't look like David or me. Smart girl. Too smart sometimes. I told her genetics are complicated, that she has my grandmother's coloring. Another lie to add to the mountain I've built. But when I see how David's face lights up when she runs to him, when I watch him teach her to ride her bike with such patience and pride, I know I made the right choice. He is her father, in every way that counts. The room spun around me. Dad, David, wasn't my biological father. The man who'd taught me to drive, who'd stayed up all night helping with science projects, who'd walked me down the aisle at my wedding just 2 years ago, wasn't actually related to me at all. But who was James? I found the answer in an entry from Emma's high school graduation, May 20th, 2015. Emma looks so much like David did at 18. Sometimes I catch him staring at her with such wonder, amazed by the similarities. If only he knew that Sarah is just as much his daughter, despite sharing no DNA. Love makes families, not blood. I learned that from James before I lost him. I went to his grave yesterday, told him about Sarah's acceptance to college, how proud he'd be. The headstone still looks too new, even after 16 years since the accident. Sometimes I wonder what our life would have been like if he hadn't died. But then I remember that I might never have found David, never have given Sarah the father she deserved. The journal slipped from my numb fingers. James was dead, had been dead since I was a baby. My biological father was a name on a headstone, a ghost who'd never known me. I kept reading, hungry now for every detail about this shadow parent. February 14th, 2010. Sarah drew a family portrait for Valentine's Day. Stick figures of her, David, Emma, and me, all holding hands under a rainbow. She labeled it My Family in wobbly purple letters. If she only knew how hard I fought to give her this family, how many nights I cried wondering if I was being selfish keeping James's secret. But look at her. Look at how secure she is, how loved. David's love is fierce and unconditional. She's never doubted for a second that she belongs. James would understand. He always said that love was the only thing that mattered, that biology was just chemistry. If he could see her now, confident, curious, kind, he'd know I chose right. Tears blurred my vision as I read entry after entry, chronicling my childhood from this hidden perspective. Mom had documented every milestone, every scraped knee, every triumph, but always with this underlying current of protective guilt. She'd carried this secret for 24 years, never once letting it slip, never allowing me to doubt my place in our family. But there was more. In an entry from just last year, October 3rd, 2023, Sarah is pregnant. I'm going to be a grandmother. When she told me, I saw James in her smile, the way one corner lifts higher than the other. I wanted so badly to tell her about him, to share the stories I've hoarded all these years. James was funny, brilliant, kind, everything I see in Sarah. But what purpose would it serve now except to shatter the foundation of her life? David cried when she called him with the news. Happy tears. I can't wait to spoil that baby rotten, he said. He's already planning a nursery renovation. This is why I kept the secret. This love, this joy, this unbreakable bond between them. Some truths are less important than the families they might destroy. I closed the journal and sat in the gathering dusk processing everything I'd learned. My entire identity had shifted in the space of an hour. Yet somehow I felt okay. Shaky, emotional, confused, but okay. Dad was downstairs making dinner, probably wondering what was taking me so long. I could hear him humming off key, the same tuneless melody he'd hummed my whole life. In a few minutes, he'd call up to ask if I'd found anything interesting, and I'd have to decide what to tell him. The journal lay open to one final entry, dated just a week before Mom's sudden heart attack, November 18th, 2024. If something happens to me, if Sarah finds this journal, I need her to know. Every choice I made was out of love. David is her father. I chose him not just for me, but for her. I gave her the family she deserved, the one James would have wanted for his daughter. And if she ever doubts that she belongs, she need only look at how David's face lights up every time she enters a room. That's not duty or obligation. That's pure, unconditional love. Sarah, my darling girl, if you're reading this, you are exactly where you're supposed to be, with exactly the family you were meant to have. Love created you, love raised you, and love will carry you forward. The details of biology matter so much less than the choice to love completely. I regret nothing. I wiped my eyes and carefully closed the journal. The weight of this knowledge settled on my shoulders, but it wasn't crushing. It was illuminating. 24 years of memories suddenly made perfect sense. Dad's fierce protectiveness when boys came calling. The way he'd beam with pride at my smallest accomplishments. How he'd never once made me feel different from Emma, even when I struggled with subjects that came naturally to her. I thought about my wedding day, how he'd cried when he saw me in my dress. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he'd whispered, his voice thick with emotion. At the time, I'd attributed it to typical father of the bride sentimentality. Now I understood it differently. He was seeing the little girl he'd chosen to love as his own, grown into a woman who'd never questioned her place in his heart. Downstairs, Dad was still humming, still making enough dinner for two, even though it was just him now. The familiar sound wrapped around me like a warm blanket. In 3 days, I'd bring my newborn son to meet his grandfather, the man who'd loved me fiercely for 24 years without sharing a single strand of DNA. I found myself wondering about James for the first time. What had he been like? Mom's entries painted him as kind and funny. But he remained a beautiful abstraction, a ghost who'd given me life, but never the chance to know him. There was a pang of loss there, but it was distant, like mourning someone you'd only heard about in stories. The real grief would have been losing Dad, the man who'd taught me to tie my shoes, who'd sat through countless ballet recitals and soccer games, who'd held my hand during my first heartbreak and walked me down the aisle toward my future. Biology hadn't created those bonds, choice had. His choice to love me, Mom's choice to give me that love, my unconscious choice to accept it completely. I thought about calling Emma, telling her what I'd discovered, but something held me back. This felt too raw, too sacred to share yet. Maybe someday, but not today. Today, this knowledge belonged to me and the memory of my mother, who'd carried this secret with such grace and wisdom. Mom was right. Love makes families. And I'd been loved completely my entire life by the only father I'd ever needed. But there was more I needed to understand. I opened the journal again, searching for earlier entries, hungry for more pieces of the puzzle. Hidden between pages near the back, I found loose photographs, pictures I'd never seen before. A young woman who looked startlingly like me, laughing beside a tall man with kind eyes and my crooked smile. Mom and James. There were other photos too. James holding a baby that must have been me, his face radiant with joy and wonder. In the margins of one photo, Mom had written in faded ink, "He loved you so much already. You would have adored each other." The final photo made my breath catch. It showed James, Mom, and baby me together, looking every inch like a perfect family. But it was the date on the back that stopped my heart, 2 days before the accident. He'd known me, held me, loved me for such a brief moment before fate intervened. I sat there in Mom's bedroom, surrounded by the remnants of her life, holding evidence of a love story I'd never known existed. The tragedy of it was overwhelming. James never got to see me take my first steps, never heard my first words, never knew the woman I'd become. But the beauty was there too, in Mom's courage to build something lasting from the ashes of loss, in Dad's immediate and complete acceptance of a motherless baby who needed a father. The journal would go back into its hiding place. Some secrets were worth keeping, especially when they protected something as precious as the love between a father and daughter who chose each other in every way that mattered. I tucked the diary back between the mattresses and carefully slipped the photos inside my purse. These I would keep, not as evidence of a life unlived, but as proof of the love that had shaped my existence from the very beginning. Downstairs, I could hear Dad setting the table, his movements slower than they used to be, but still purposeful. At 72, he was facing his own mortality, his own questions about legacy and love. Tonight, I would sit across from him at dinner and see him with new eyes, understanding finally the magnitude of his gift to me. "Sarah?" His voice drifted upstairs. "Everything okay up there?" "Coming, Dad," I called back, my voice steady despite the tears on my cheeks. I went downstairs to help him with dinner, my heart full of gratitude for the mother who'd loved me enough to give me exactly the family I needed, and for the father who'd never once made me feel like anything less than his whole world. As we ate together, in comfortable silence, I watched him carefully. This man who'd chosen love over biology, commitment over convenience, forever over the easier path. Outside, the first stars were appearing, and somewhere in the distance, I could almost hear my mother's voice whispering what she'd written on the journal's final page. Love is the only truth that matters. She was right, as always. And tomorrow, I would begin the beautiful work of loving my own son with the same fierce, unconditional devotion that had shaped every day of my blessed life.